invite you to stand for our final reading. This reading from the book of 1 Kings is found in the story on page 193 through 195. We are in chapter 14 of the story and chapter 12 of 1 Kings. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone there to make him king. When Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard this, he was still in Egypt, where he had fled from King Solomon. He returned from Egypt. So they sent for Jeroboam, and he and the whole assembly of Israel went to Rehoboam and said to him, "Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will serve you." Rehoboam answered, "Go away for 3 days and then come back to me." So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. "How would you advise me to answer these people?" he asked. They replied, "If today you will be a servant to these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants." But Rehoboam rejected the advice that the elders gave him and consulted the young men who had grown up with him and were serving him. He asked them, "What is your advice? How should we answer these people who say to me, 'Lighten the yoke of your father put on us'?" The young men who had grown up with him replied, "These people have said to you, 'Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but make our yoke lighter.' Now tell them, 'My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father laid on you a heavy yoke. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions." 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to Rehoboam, as the king had said, "Come back to me in 3 days." The king answered the people harshly. Rejecting the advice given him by the elders, he followed the advice of the young men and said, "My father made your yoke heavy. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions." So the king did not listen to the people, for this turn of events was from the Lord, to fulfill the word the Lord had spoken to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through Ahijah the Shilonite. When all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to them, they answered the king, "What share do we have in David? What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, Israel, look after your own house, David." So the Israelites went home. But as for the Israelites who were living in the towns of Judah, Rehoboam still ruled over them. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen. You may be seated. So I know that at least a few of you read chapter 14 of the story and said, "I wonder what he's going to preach on." Things are kind of a mess in Israel right now. And if you read through the whole chapter, you know that Israel and Judah were going through kings like many people go through bottles of water. They came and they went. So where is it that we can settle? Where is it that we can find a word for today? And I happened to find it right at the beginning of the chapter. It was a nice beginning. And while I knew the story, I still had hopes that things would turn out differently. I mean, here's Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, in line to be the next king. And the people come to him and say, "Be nice to us. Lighten our load just a little bit. Being nicer than your father Solomon was to us. And if you do this, if you do us this favor, if you lighten our load just a little bit, we will serve you forever." And Rehoboam does the wise thing. He looks for advice. And we might think for just a minute that he's following in his father's footsteps, that he has claimed the wisdom of Solomon for his own life also. And he seeks advice, first from the elders who served his father Solomon. And they give him the advice, lighten the load just a little bit. And if you do, the people will serve you forever. And then he goes to his peers, to the men he grew up with. And Rehoboam says to them, what should I do? They've asked me to lighten the load, to be a little more, a kinder, gentler Solomon. And his peers say, you can't do it. Tell them that your little finger is bigger than your father's waist. Tell them that you will not scourge them with whips, but with scorpions. Force them into obedience and servitude. And that's where my hopes of a happy story find their ending. For Rehoboam listens to his peers, to the younger men. And that's what he tells the people when they come back 3 days later. And so the kingdom would be divided. The tribes of the south would remain obedient and dutiful to Rehoboam, but the tribes of the north would go their own way. They would follow Jeroboam. And so the kingdom is divided. What a tragedy. Samuel's worst fear about the monarchy has been realized. So what lesson do we gain from this story? One possible lesson might be in the words of Paul to the Ephesians, do not let Satan gain a foothold. Do you understand that image? It's a powerful image to gain a foothold. You know, if you open the door to let someone in and you see it's someone you don't want to receive and you try to shut the door, and what do? They stick their foot right in the middle and you can't close the door. And it gives them perhaps just enough of an opening to create the leverage to pry the door open once again. The image that came to my mind is one of camping up in the Adirondacks with my family as a child. You see, one of the things you need to do when you're camping is you need to split firewood. You create a fire for cooking and for creating warmth in the mornings and in the evenings. And I'll often remember my father splitting firewood at the campsite, and he would take the axe and he would drive it into the log, but it would not go through. And as much as he couldn't get it to go through, it was a lot more difficult for me. But we had a wedge, a steel wedge. It was thick at the top and it was very narrow and pointed, not sharp, but just pointed enough at the bottom that after driving the axe into the top of the log, you could place the point of the wedge right in that crack. And then with the back of the axe or a mallet, you could start hammering that wedge into the log. And because the first crack of the axe had put a tiny split in the top of the log, it had put, if you will, a foothold. It had made the log vulnerable. And then that wedge being placed right in the crack, as it was driven down in, as that steel wedge widened, it would gradually start to split the log. I think Paul knew that that's what would happen in relationships. When he would say in Ephesians 4:25 through 27, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are members of one body. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. don't allow your relationships to become vulnerable, because like that wedge in the log, like that foot stuck in the door, it's just enough room for evil to keep working and create that separation that would eventually split the log or open the door. We are also susceptible to cracks in our relationship as members of the church, as well as in relationships in our families or friendships or even at work. Our relationships are vulnerable if we allow cracks to occur, because they can eventually become the vulnerability where logs will be split. Like Rehoboam, perhaps we also have a tendency to want to claim power, to assure our own security. And so we do that instead of seeking to provide for the welfare of others. But God will use this new reality, this split in the kingdom. God will use it for good, because it is out of that southern portion, that southern kingdom, that the Messiah will be raised up. So though it seems like bad news has come out of this split, there is the potential for good.